I had never been the kind of man to go through my wife's things. Never checked her emails, never scrolled through her texts when she wasn't looking. I believed in trust, believed that if two people shared a life, shared a home, that meant something. Maybe that made me naive. Maybe that made me a fool. Looking back, I wonder how long it had been going on right under my nose. How many times had I sat across from her at the dinner table, thinking everything was fine while she was sneaking around behind my back? How many nights had I kissed her goodnight, completely unaware that I was kissing the lips of a liar? The night it all fell apart didn't feel like the beginning of something. It felt like an ordinary evening, nothing special about it. She had made spaghetti, the same way she always did, with too much garlic and not enough salt. We ate in front of the TV, watching some mindless sitcom, the kind she liked. She laughed a few times, that soft, familiar sound I used to love. I wasn't really paying attention. I was too tired from work, my mind already drifting toward the weekend. Then she got up, stretched, and said she was going to take a shower. I barely glanced at her as she walked toward the stairs, humming some tune under her breath. And that's when it happened. Her phone lit up on the kitchen counter, buzzing against the granite just once. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. I would have ignored it completely. But something about the way the screen glowed in the dim kitchen caught my attention. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was luck. Or maybe it had been blind for too damn long, and the universe decided it was finally time to open my eyes. I leaned forward without thinking, just glancing, just curious. And there it was. A message. Just a handful of words. Nothing dramatic. Nothing fancy. When are you going to tell him the truth? That was it. A simple question, typed out in white letters on a blue background, like it wasn't about to set my entire life on fire. At first, I just stared. My brain felt slow, like it was refusing to process what I was looking at. I read it again, and then the weight of it crashed down on me like a hammer to the skull. There was no good explanation for a message like that. None. The only truth she'd have to tell me was the kind that destroyed marriages. The kind that turned love into hatred. The kind that made men do things they never thought they were capable of. I felt the anger rise up fast and sharp, cutting through me like a blade. My pulse pounded in my ears, a steady, relentless drumbeat. My hand tightened around the beer bottle I'd been holding, and for a second, I thought about smashing it right then and there, just to hear the glass shatter, just to have something break the silence. I could feel the shift happening inside me, the transformation from the man I had been 5 minutes ago to the man I was right now. Because nothing would ever be the same again. Nothing. I reached for the phone, my fingers curling around the cold metal. The screen dimmed, the message disappearing, but I had already seen enough. I didn't need to know who sent it. I didn't need to check the name. I knew exactly what it meant. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife even deeper, I heard footsteps. Soft, unhurried. She was coming back. I turned my head, watching as she stepped into the kitchen, still drying her hair with a towel, her face flushed from the steam of the shower. She looked at me, then at the phone in my hand. And right there, in that tiny, fleeting moment, I saw it. Panic. She tried to hide it fast, smoothing her expression into something neutral, but she wasn't quick enough. That 1 second was all I needed. I knew, and she knew that I knew. Her lips parted slightly like she was about to say something, but nothing came out. Her fingers gripped the towel a little tighter, knuckles turning white. I set the phone down, slowly, deliberately. The tension in the room was suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Finally, she spoke. Everything okay? Her voice was calm, too calm, carefully measured, like she was trying not to crack. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because this wasn't just a bad dream. This wasn't some stupid misunderstanding. This was war. Silence. It stretched between us like a thick, suffocating fog, pressing in from all sides. I could hear the faint ticking of the kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of the TV, still playing in the other room. But none of it mattered. The only thing that existed in that moment was the phone on the counter. That message burned into my brain, and the woman standing in front of me, the woman I thought I knew. She shifted under my stare, eyes darting between my face and the phone. Her fingers curled tighter around the towel, draped over her shoulders, her breath coming a little faster now, just barely noticeable. She knew something was wrong. She could feel it, the same way an animal can sense an oncoming storm. But she wasn't going to admit it. Not yet. She tried to play it off. Did something happen? Her voice was light, casual, too casual. Like she was talking about forgetting to take the trash out or misplacing her keys. I didn't answer. I just stood there, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. The rage inside me was simmering, bubbling just beneath the surface, but I wasn't going to explode. Not yet. She took a step closer, forcing a soft smile onto her lips. "Babe, what's wrong?" And that was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The fake concern in her voice, the way she tried to act normal, as if I didn't just see proof that she was lying to my face, sent a bolt of fury through me so intense I had to force myself to breathe. I grabbed the phone and turned the screen toward her, the message still sitting there, clear as day. "When are you going to tell him the truth?" Her face paled. Not much, but enough. A slight twitch in her jaw, the way her lips pressed together just a little too tightly. It was a small reaction, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. And in that moment, I knew she was guilty. She tried to cover it up, blinking quickly, shaking her head like I was being ridiculous. What's this about? A part of me admired the effort, the sheer audacity of it, the ability to stand there, look me in the eye, and pretend like she didn't know exactly what was happening. But I wasn't an idiot, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let her play me for one. I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady. "You tell me." She let out a small, nervous laugh, rubbing the back of her neck. "I don't even know what this is." Cut the crap. My voice came out sharp, colder than I expected. "Who sent it?" She hesitated, just for a second, but that second told me everything I needed to know. I could see her mind racing, scrambling for an explanation, trying to find the right combination of words that would make me doubt what I had just seen. She was stalling, and I let her, because every second that passed, every flicker of hesitation, was another nail in the coffin of whatever trust we had left. Finally, she let out a slow breath, shaking her head. "It's not what you think. That sentence, that goddamn sentence, the universal excuse of the guilty, the go-to defense of every cheater, liar, and backstabber caught red-handed." I felt my grip tighten around the phone, my jaw clenching so hard it hurt. "Then why don't you tell me what it is?" She wet her lips, buying time. "It's just, look, I can explain, but you need to promise me you won't get mad." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound that even surprised me. "You want me to promise that? After this?" I waved the phone between us. "Are you serious?" She sighed, rubbing her temples like she was the one dealing with something exhausting. Like I was the problem here. "It's complicated," she muttered. I scoffed. "Of course it is." I could feel the anger rising again, a wildfire consuming everything in its path. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab something and throw it across the damn room. But most of all, I wanted her to tell me the truth. Because that was the worst part of all of this. Not just the betrayal itself, but the way she was still trying to control the narrative. The way she still thought she could talk her way out of it, twist the story into something more digestible, something that made her the victim. I stepped closer, staring down at her. "You cheated on me." It wasn't a question. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement. A fact. She flinched like I had struck her. "No," she said quickly. "No, it's not like that." "Then what the hell is it?" Silence. And then, finally, she cracked. She let out a shuddering breath, her shoulders slumping. It was a mistake. A mistake. A mistake. Like she had tripped and fallen into someone else's bed. Like it had been some accident, some unfortunate whoops that just happened to involve another man. I felt my stomach churn, my fingers twitching with the urge to break something. "Ooh." My voice was barely above a whisper. She hesitated. Too long. And then she whispered back, almost as if she was ashamed of the words coming out of her mouth. "Someone from work." The rage inside me exploded into something even worse. Pure, undiluted hatred. For her. For him. For the life I had wasted on a woman who didn't deserve it. I took a step back, shaking my head. "How long?" She swallowed hard, looking anywhere but at me. "It wasn't. Ow. Long." Her eyes flickered to mine, and for the first time that night, I saw a real fear in them. 3 months, she admitted. 3 months. 90 days. Almost 100 mornings of waking up beside me, smiling, kissing me goodbye, then going to work and doing things I never even knew about. I clench my fists, my whole body shaking from the effort of keeping myself under control. I didn't trust myself to speak. I didn't even trust myself to stay in the same room as her. Because if I did, if I looked at her for one more second, I was going to do something I'd regret. So I turned around, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just drove. The night swallowed me whole as I sped down the empty streets, my grip white-knuckled on the wheel. Streetlights flickered past in long, hazy streaks, but I barely saw them. My mind was elsewhere, stuck in that kitchen, stuck on that message, stuck on the way she had stood there, lying to my face like it was the easiest thing in the world. 3 months. That number burned itself into my brain. 3 months of her sneaking around behind my back. 3 months of sharing my bed, my home, my life, all while giving herself to another man. I clenched my jaw so hard it felt like my teeth might crack. I should have seen the signs. That's what people always say, right? But the clues are always there if you just open your eyes. Had she been coming home later than usual? Had she been spending more time on her phone, smiling at texts that weren't for me? Had she been less affectionate, less engaged, less present? Maybe, but I hadn't wanted to see it. Because who the hell wants to believe that the person they built their life with is capable of such a betrayal? The idea of it had never even crossed my mind. Not once. I had trusted her. Completely. And now, I was nothing more than a goddamn joke. I slammed my foot against the gas pedal, the car lurching forward, the speedometer needle climbing. I barely even noticed. The world outside was a blur, my own pulse roaring in my ears. I wanted to hurt something, break something, tear something apart with my bare hands. Him. The thought came out of nowhere, sharp and violent. The bastard from her office. The man who had been with my wife. I didn't even know his name yet, but it didn't matter. I was going to find out. And when I did, I shook my head, forcing a breath through my nose. I couldn't go there. Not yet. I needed a plan. I couldn't just storm into her office tomorrow and start throwing punches. No, that would be too easy and too stupid. I needed to think. I needed to know everything. Because one thing was certain. If she thought she was getting away with this, she was dead wrong. The return home. I didn't go far. Maybe a few miles before I finally pulled into some dark, empty parking lot and sat there, staring at the dashboard, trying to get a grip. But no matter how many deep breaths I took, no matter how many times I clenched and unclenched my fists, the rage didn't leave me. It sat there, simmering, bubbling just beneath the surface. I knew I couldn't stay out all night. As much as I wanted to disappear into the dark and pretend none of this was real, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was running away. So, after maybe an hour of sitting in that car, I turned around and headed home. The house no longer felt like mine. When I walked through the front door, the air inside felt different. Heavier. Stained. Like the walls themselves knew what she had done. She was sitting on the couch, knees pulled up to her chest, eyes red and puffy. She had been crying. Probably the entire time I was gone. Good. She jumped when she saw me, wiping at her face like that would somehow erase everything. I didn't know if you were coming back, she whispered. I didn't answer. I walked past her, straight to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and twisted off the cap. She watched me in silence. I could feel her staring, like she was waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to scream at her, waiting for me to break down. I did none of those things. I just leaned against the counter, took a long sip, and stared at her. Let her squirm. Finally, she broke. I'm sorry, she whispered. I laughed. A short, bitter sound. Sorry, I repeated. That's it? That's all you've got? Her chin trembled. She shook her head, gripping at her own arms like she was trying to hold herself together. I never meant for this to happen. Another laugh. This one sharper. Colder. Never meant for it to happen? What? Did you trip and fall on his? Stop. Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please, just let me explain. I wanted to throw my beer bottle against the wall. I wanted to watch it shatter into 1,000 pieces. Instead, I set it down with a controlled, deliberate motion and crossed my arms. Go ahead, I said. Explain. Tell me why you spent 3 months screwing someone behind my back. I'd love to hear it. She sniffled, looking down at her lap. I was lonely. That did it. That single word sent my blood boiling all over again. Lonely, I echoed. You were lonely? She nodded, wiping at her nose. You've been so busy with work lately. We barely talk anymore. I felt like I was invisible. I let out a slow, controlled breath. I had to, because if I didn't, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. You felt invisible, I said finally. So instead of talking to me, instead of telling me how you felt, you decided to F*** your coworker? She winced. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Tears streamed down her face now. I swear to you, it didn't mean anything. I held up a hand. Stop talking. She shut her mouth instantly. I pushed off the counter and took a slow step toward her. Did he know about me? She blinked. What? I clenched my jaw. Did he know you were married? She hesitated, just long enough to answer my question. Yes, he knew, and he did it anyway. I turned away, running a hand down my face. That bastard. That spineless, disgusting excuse for a man. He had knowingly gone after my wife, had taken what wasn't his, had helped her make a fool out of me, and now he was sitting somewhere, probably in his own home, acting like nothing was wrong. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. No, he wasn't getting away with this. Neither of them were. I turned back to her, my voice eerily calm. I want his name. She swallowed. What? You heard me, I said, my eyes locked onto hers. Tell me his name. She shook her head quickly, panic flashing across her face. No, tell me his goddamn name. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. And then, finally, she whispered 2 words that changed everything. She told me his name, and I smiled, because now, I had everything I needed. Her voice barely carried through the thick silence of the room. She had said his name, and the moment it left her lips, something inside me shifted. The last shred of restraint, the last thread of self-control I had been clinging to, snapped. I repeated it, rolling it over my tongue, tasting the bitterness of it like poison. Mark. I didn't know him, Mark. Not personally, but I knew he existed. And now, I knew he was real enough to destroy my marriage. My wife, no, not my wife. The woman I once thought I knew was still sitting there, her hands curled in a fist in her lap, her entire body tense, like she expected me to lunge at her any second. I wouldn't. Not because I wasn't angry. No, I was beyond angry. I was something worse. I was calculating. I picked up my beer, took another long sip, and exhaled through my nose, letting the silence linger. I wanted her to sit in her own filth, in her own guilt, to stew in it like I had been for the last few hours. She deserved it. Mark, I said again, slower this time. I watched her flinch like I had struck her. Mark, who? She bit her lip. It doesn't matter. I laughed. A slow, cold chuckle. She still thought she had control. I leaned forward, bracing my hands against the counter. Oh, it matters. It matters a whole lot. Her breath hitched, her fingers twisting into the fabric of her pajama pants. Please, I don't want you to do anything crazy. Crazy. That was rich. She had spent 3 months lying to my face. 3 months sneaking around like some high school kid, betraying me in the worst way imaginable. And now she was worried about me doing something crazy? She really had no idea who she was dealing with. I tilted my head. You don't want me to do anything crazy? I echoed. You mean like sleeping with a coworker behind my back? She squeezed her eyes shut. I know. I F*** get up? Okay. Her voice cracked. I don't need you to keep rubbing it in. I pushed off the counter and straightened. Oh, you don't. I took another sip of my beer, swallowing down the urge to smash the bottle right there on the floor. That's too bad, because I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Her lip trembled. I don't want to hear it. I snapped. I don't give a damn about your excuses. I just want one thing from you. She hesitated. What? I set the bottle down on the counter, hard enough that it made a sharp, clinking noise. Then, without breaking eye contact, I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. I want you to call him. Her entire body went stiff. WH what? You heard me. I tapped the screen. Call him. Right now. She shook her head, panic flashing in her eyes. No, I can't. You can, I said. And you will. She was breathing faster now, her chest rising and falling with every panicked inhale. Please, just let me explain first. No, I stepped closer, towering over her. You've had 3 months to explain. Now, they're going to do something for me. Her eyes darted to the phone, then back to me. I don't. I gave her a slow, deliberate smile. Either you call him, or I will. Your choice. Her breath hitched. You don't even know his number. I shrugged. Then I guess I'll just show up at your office and start asking around. The blood drained from her face. Good. For the first time tonight, she looked genuinely afraid. I could see it now. The wheels turning in her head, the realization sinking in. She had spent months lying to me, thinking she could keep her little secret buried forever. But the second that message popped up on her phone, the second I knew, the entire foundation of her pathetic little affair had crumbled. And now, she had 2 options. Either she gave me what I wanted, or I was going to dig it up myself. Her lip quivered. He doesn't deserve this. I barked out a laugh. Oh, he doesn't deserve this. I took another step forward, forcing her to look up at me. Tell me, does he have a wife? A girlfriend? She hesitated. No, but... Then he sure as hell deserves this, I growled. He knew you were married. He knew what he was doing. He deserves everything that's coming to him. She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling as she reached for her phone. She hesitated again, staring down at the screen like it was a live bomb. I crossed my arms. You're running out of time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she took a deep, shaky breath and dialed. The call. The first ring felt like thunder in the silent room. The second one dragged out longer. Then, a voice. His voice. Hey, babe. Babe. The casualness of it, the familiarity, it made my blood boil. She opened her mouth, but before she could get a word out, I reached forward and snatched the phone out of her hand. Hey, Mark, I said smoothly. Guess who? Silence. Then, a nervous chuckle. Who's this? I grinned. Oh, come on, buddy. Don't tell me you don't recognize your best friend's voice. More silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, the panic setting in. Then, he did something that sealed his fate. He hung up. I stared at the phone, the empty call screen staring back at me. Slowly, I turned to my wife. She was shaking. I didn't know he would. Shut up. My voice came out quiet. Deadly. I pocketed the phone and grabbed my keys. Where are you going? She asked, panic rising in her voice. I didn't answer, because the truth was I didn't know where I was going. I just knew that Mark wasn't getting away with this. I walked out the front door, the rage pulsing through me like a second heartbeat. My grip on the keys was so tight my knuckles ached, but I didn't loosen it. I couldn't. He hung up. That coward. That pathetic excuse for a man. The second he heard my voice, he bolted like a rat caught in the open, and that told me everything I needed to know about him. He wasn't just some passing mistake. He wasn't just some guy she kissed at an office party or flirted with on lunch breaks. He was a real problem, and I was going to handle it. My truck roared to life as I shoved the key into the ignition, my mind already running through the possibilities. I didn't have his number, but I had my wife's phone. If I dug through it, I'd find what I needed. Messages, call logs, maybe even pictures. I could use all of it against them. But no, that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't need proof. I didn't need to read through their disgusting, pathetic messages, filled with whatever twisted justifications they had fed each other. I just needed him, and I had a pretty good idea of where to find him. The office. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of my wife's office building, the streets were empty. The lights inside the building were dim, most of the employees already home for the night. But not all of them. I knew his type. He was the kind of guy who stayed late, working just enough overtime to look responsible while using the empty office to get away with things. The kind of guy who thrived on secrecy. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the truck. My boots hit the pavement with solid, deliberate thuds, and I let the night air cool my burning skin. I was wired, adrenaline surging through my veins, but I wasn't reckless. Not yet. I made my way to the front doors. Locked, of course, but a side entrance? A back door? Someone had to still be inside. Someone who could let me in. I walked around the building, my pulse hammering, and then, bingo, a small side entrance near the loading dock, the kind of door only employees used. A lone light flickered above it, casting a dim yellow glow. I reached for the handle. Locked. That's fine, because I wasn't in the mood to be polite. I pounded on the door, 3 sharp, solid knocks. I waited. Seconds passed. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. Then footsteps. The door cracked open slightly, and a young guy, maybe early 20s, stuck his head out. His eyes widened when he saw me. Can I help you? I forced a tight-lipped smile. Yeah, I'm looking for Mark. The kid frowned. Mark? Yeah, works here. Tall, brown hair, a little too confident for his own good. I tilted my head. You seen him? The kid hesitated. He knew who I was talking about. I could see it in his face. He shifted nervously. I think he left already. I narrowed my eyes. Lie. I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady. Listen, I just need to talk to him. Won't take long. The kid swallowed hard, glancing over his shoulder. Then, finally, he stepped aside. He's still upstairs. I walked in without another word. The confrontation. The office was dimly lit, most of the cubicles empty. Computers hummed quietly, the air smelling like stale coffee and cheap cologne. And then, at the far end of the floor, a single light was still on. A shadow moved behind the frosted glass of an office door. Mark! I clenched my fists, my body vibrating with barely contained rage as I stalked forward. I didn't knock. I didn't give him the courtesy. I shoved the door open. Mark looked up from his desk, startled, his hand frozen over his keyboard. He was exactly what I expected, clean-cut, well-dressed, the kind of guy who thought a crisp suit and an easy smile made him untouchable. Jesus, what the hell? He sat up straighter, blinking at me. Boo, you know exactly who I am. My voice came out calm. Too calm. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. He swallowed. His hand twitched toward his phone, but I was faster. I reached across the desk, grabbed it, and tossed it onto the floor. It clattered, the screen going black. You don't need that, I said. His Adam's apple bobbed. Look, I don't know what. I leaned forward, placing both hands on his desk. Shut up. He did. Good. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of the moment sink in. His breath quickened. He wasn't used to being confronted. He was used to getting away with things. Not this time. You know who I am, I repeated. So let's not waste time pretending. Mark licked his lips, his gaze flickering toward the door. Listen, man, I grabbed the edge of his desk and shoved it forward. The entire thing jolted, knocking over his coffee, making paper scatter. He jumped back in his chair, his face draining of color. Jesus. I stepped around the desk. He scrambled to stand, but I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him back into his seat. I'm only going to ask you once, I said, my voice low, dangerous. Did you know she was married? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I tightened my grip. Did you? No. Finally, he nodded. That was all it took. Something inside me snapped. I swung. My fist connected with his jaw, the impact sending him sprawling out of his chair. He hit the floor hard, groaning, hands scrambling against the carpet. I stood over him, chest heaving, watching as he coughed, spitting out blood. I should break your F******ng ribs, I said, my voice trembling with fury. I should make sure you never even look at another married woman again. He whimpered, holding his jaw. Please. Shut the hell up. I crouched down, gripping the front of his shirt, forcing him to look at me. I want you to quit, I said. Tomorrow morning, you walk into HR and resign. No 2 weeks' notice. No excuses. You leave. His breathing was ragged. I shook him. Do you understand me? He nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, I'll do it. I let him go, standing up. If I ever hear your name again, if I even see your face near my wife, you'll wish I only broke your jaw. He didn't argue, because he knew I wasn't making an empty threat. I turned and walked out, my pulse still roaring in my ears. I had taken the first step, but I wasn't done yet, because now I had to deal with her. I drove home in silence. My knuckles still throbbed from the punch. A dull ache pulsed beneath the skin, but I didn't care. It was a good pain. The kind that reminded me that I had done something, that I hadn't just sat back and let another man take what was mine without consequence. Mark wouldn't be showing up at work tomorrow. He wouldn't be sending my wife any more messages, no more stolen glances across the office, no more secret meetings in parking lots or cheap hotel rooms. I made sure of that. But the job wasn't finished, because she was still waiting at home. The woman who had smiled at me across dinner tables, who had kissed me goodbye every morning while knowing she had someone else's hands on her the night before. She had let him inside our life, our marriage, and now it was time for her to face what she had done, walking into a house that wasn't home anymore. The moment I pulled into the driveway, I saw her. The living room light was still on, spilling a soft glow through the curtains. I could see her silhouette pacing near the window, arms wrapped around herself. She was waiting. Good. I stepped out of the truck, slammed the door, and made my way inside. She turned the second she heard the front door open. Oh my God. Her voice was hoarse, like she had been crying. Her hands flew to her mouth when she saw me. What did you do? I didn't answer. I shut the door behind me and locked it. Her eyes darted to my hand, the knuckles bruised and swollen, and she took a shaky step back. You went to see him, didn't you? I dropped my keys onto the counter and stared at her. Of course I did. She swallowed hard. What did you do? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see her squirm. I wanted her to feel just an ounce of the rage, the humiliation, the betrayal she had put me through. I stepped forward. She stepped back. Did he tell you? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Did your little boyfriend text you the moment I left? She shook her head quickly, eyes darting toward her phone on the couch. I don't know. I haven't looked. I tilted my head. Why not? Her lips trembled. Because I was waiting for you. I laughed. A dark, bitter sound. Oh, so now I matter? Her face crumpled. Please. Shut up. The words came out sharp, cutting through whatever excuse she was about to give me. Just stop talking. Stop lying. Stop pretending you give a damn about me. She flinched like I had hit her. That's not fair. Not fair. I barked out another laugh. You're telling me what's not fair? Her shoulders shook, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't want this to happen. I stepped closer, towering over her. But you let it happen. She sucked in a breath. I leaned in just slightly, my voice lowering to a deadly whisper. 3 months. That's how long you let another man touch you. That's how long you chose him over me. She shook her head. It wasn't about choosing. Oh, don't give me that bull's asterisk T. I was done playing the fool. I was done letting her rewrite the story to make herself feel better. I turned away, running a hand down my face, try to ground myself, to keep from breaking something, because I could feel it, the pure, seething hatred rising inside me like a storm. I had never hated anyone before. Not really. But now, I hated my wife. I hated the way she looked at me, her eyes filled with guilt, but not regret. I hated the way she stood there, waiting for me to somehow make this easier for her. I hated the fact that I still loved her, despite everything. And that was the worst part of all. The lies keep coming. I should leave, I said finally, breaking the silence. She gasped softly. What? I should pack a bag and walk out that door. I met her eyes. That's what you want, isn't it? For me to leave, so you don't have to face what you've done? She shook her head wildly. No, I don't want that. I scoffed. Then what do you want? She opened her mouth. Closed it. She didn't know. Because she hadn't thought that far ahead. She had spent 3 months living a fantasy, wrapped up in stolen moments and whispered promises, without ever thinking about the damage she was doing. And now that it was crashing down around her, she had no idea how to clean up the mess. She took a tentative step forward. I know I don't deserve it, but her voice cracked. Can we fix this? Fix this. Fix this. A slow, burning rage built in my chest, spreading like wildfire. She still thought she had a say in this. She still thought she could control the outcome. I turned and grabbed a chair, pulling it out roughly before sitting down. Tell me everything. She hesitated. I narrowed my eyes. Now. She took a deep breath, wiping at her face like that would somehow make her look less guilty. It started after the office party, she whispered. I clenched my fists. She kept going. Details I didn't want, words I never should have had to hear. How it started with a conversation. How he made her feel seen. How one drink turned into a second, and then a third, and before she knew it, she was in his car, kissing him like she hadn't kissed me in years. My stomach churned. She kept talking. How she told herself it was just once. How she swore she would stop. But she didn't. Because she didn't want to. Because she enjoyed it. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. She jumped, her breath hitching. Please. I turned away, running a hand through my hair, my heart hammering so hard I could barely think. I had two choices. I could leave, walk away, file for divorce, burn every memory of her from my life, and never look back. Or I could stay. But if I stayed, I wouldn't be the same man anymore. She had taken something from me, something I could never get back. I took one last look at her, standing there, waiting, and I made my decision. I stood there, staring at her, the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted above all else, and I felt nothing. The rage had burned so hot, so violent, that now it had left nothing but ashes behind. I should have felt something. Pain, sorrow, loss. But all I felt was emptiness. She stood there, eyes red and swollen, her whole body tense like she was bracing for my next words. Can we fix this? That was what she had asked me. Like our marriage was some broken piece of furniture that just needed a little glue and patience. Like she hadn't spent 3 months lying to my face. Like she hadn't let another man touch her while I sat at home, unaware, believing in the illusion she had created. I let out a slow, steady breath. And then I finally spoke. No. Her face crumpled. Please, she whispered, stepping forward. Please, we could try. I'll do whatever it takes. I tilted my head, watching her. You'll do whatever it takes? She nodded frantically. Yes. Yes, I swear. I took a slow step toward her, closing the distance between us. She inhaled sharply, eyes searching mine, hope flickering in them like a dying flame. I let the silence stretch, let her think, just for a second, that there was still a chance. Then I leaned in, my voice a low, cold whisper. I don't want you anymore. The words hit her harder than any punch ever could. She gasped a choked, broken sound, her knees wobbling beneath her. I didn't look away. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to understand what she had done. 3 months of lying. 3 months of sneaking around. 3 months of betrayal. That was what she had given me. So now, I was giving her something in return. The cold, hard truth. She covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing, shaking her head like she could somehow undo everything. I love you, she whimpered through the tears. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. No, you don't. She blinked through the tears, lips trembling. I do. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. My voice was steady, emotionless. You wouldn't have let him touch you. You wouldn't have lied to my face for 3 months. You wouldn't have looked me in the eyes every morning, knowing what you were doing, and pretended like everything was fine. She sobbed harder, her whole body shaking. It was a mistake. I scoffed. No, a mistake is forgetting to lock the door. A mistake is leaving the stove on. I took a step back, my voice dropping lower. Cheating is a choice. And you made it. Over and over again. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch, covering her face, shaking, breaking apart right in front of me. I watched her for a moment, taking in the sight. This was the woman who had ruined everything. And now, she wanted me to pick up the pieces? No, that wasn't my job anymore. But goodbye. I turned away, walking toward the bedroom. She lifted her head, blinking through the tears. W, where are you going? I didn't answer. I stepped into the bedroom and grabbed a duffel bag from the closet. She stumbled after me, panic setting in. Wait, no, what are you doing? I tossed the bag onto the bed and started throwing clothes into it. She rushed to my side, grabbing my arm. Please don't do this. I yanked my arm free and turned to her. I didn't do this. You did. Fresh tears streamed down her face. We can get help. Therapy. Anything. Just don't. I zipped the bag shut. There's nothing left to fix. She shook her head wildly. You're just angry. You don't mean this. I met her eyes, my voice firm. Yes, I do. She let out a strangled sob, clutching her chest like I had stabbed her. But I didn't care. Not anymore. I grabbed my bag, walked past her, and headed for the door. Her footsteps followed me. "Where are you going to go?" I didn't look back. "Anywhere but here." I reached for the door handle, but she grabbed my arm again. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please don't leave me." I turned my head just slightly, my voice flat. "You left me first." And then I walked out. The aftermath. The night air was cool against my burning skin as I stepped outside. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes for a moment, letting it sink in. I had just walked away from my entire life. From the home we had built. From the woman I had once loved. From the future I thought we were supposed to have. But as I stood there, staring at the dark sky above, I realized something. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel lost. I felt free. The pain would come later. I knew that. But right now, I was finally done being a fool. I tossed my bag into the truck, climbed inside, and started the engine. Then, without looking back, I drove into the night, leaving her and everything she had destroyed behind.